Ladies and gentlemen, the Drive to Dayton, episode number 3. Here we are. Hard to believe it's already episode 3. Gentlemen, another big week for you guys. How we doing?
Doing good. I already feel like I'm starting to run on fumes a little bit, and that's not a good sign. The check engine light coming on in week 3 is
early.
Not great. And I got a busy week coming up. I think today might be the only day of the week where I do not have either a high school game or a college game. So I got to buckle up, got to catch the second win. So.
Yeah, we stay busy here on the Drive to Dayton. Another solid weekend with an event Saturday and Sunday. Going to be doing the same thing next weekend. Got a couple midweek games, a couple in Ohio, a couple in Kentucky. So I'm staying on the highway, that's for sure.
Well, guys, we got a jam-packed show. We're loaded today for our growing listenership out there. Let's jump right into this. I got an introductory question for you guys. All right. So here's what I'm thinking. All right. So we've got a VIP lounge. All right. And you're working the door and you're the bouncer, whatever you want to think of yourself as. You're only allowed to let 5 teams in the door. Who are they? Now, listen, for those of you out there, this isn't necessarily the 5 best teams. This is somebody that you're taking in the club with you. So who is it going to be? TJ, I'll start with you.
So with this, when I saw this question, I didn't want to put a ton of thought into it. I wanted to just go with the first 5 teams that popped in my brain. Just kind of my initial gut instinct. To me, these are the 5 teams that I absolutely would trust right now, that I can let them in the VIP section. They're not going to go crazy with the bottle service. They're not going to get tossed out the club. Rob, if you don't know, I just want to give you an idea. Rob, the club is where adults like. Okay, never mind. So the 5 teams I went with off the top of my head. So I got St. Ignatius, Delaware Hayes, Garfield Heights, Centerville, and then a team I just saw this past weekend in Lutheran West. So those were the 5 immediate teams that popped up. Ottawa Glandorf would kind of be on my honorable mention list, probably along with Reynoldsburg, Hilliard Bradley at full strength, Cincinnati Moeller probably at full strength as well. Moeller's without two starters currently, and they still picked up a pretty big win this past weekend. But they would be still outside the club at the moment.
Roth?
Well, it's a good thing we have more than one bouncer, because I'm letting in St. Ignatius, Centerville, Ottawa Glandorf, Moeller, and Lutheran East. So got a little bit of different qualifications here. I just feel like these 5 teams, I know what I'm going to get out of them. It doesn't matter if you're playing a game at Nationwide Arena, at Dayton Arena, or if you're playing a game in the playground in St. Clairsville. Okay, these teams are going to come out, they're going to compete, they're going to give you a great effort, and their programs that year in and year out, they win. And I wanted to fit in 6 because the team that Muller beat this weekend, St. Vincent St. Mary, they were going to be my 6th team that I let in, but apparently max capacity, only 5 teams in this VIP lounge, and my 5 again are Ignatius, Centerville, OG, Moeller, and Lutheran East.
All right, so I'm the psycho here, and I put way too much thought into this because it was my question. So, all right, I'm rolling up to the lounge here, and the first team I got with me, I've got the Highland Hawks. I need somebody that's coming in with me that's consistent. Like, I just know this is what I'm going to get. I'm going to get a team that's going to get me to the Final Four. I don't know. They may get blown out once they get in the lounge, but they're going to be there. So I just need that consistent person next to me. But I'm going in, but I got to have somebody, because I'm not tough, so I got to bring somebody in that's tough. So I'm going to bring Ed Kalo's Westerville South squad with me. All right, I know that they're going to be tough. So I'm going to bring them with me. And then you always got that one person with you that, they got some style, right? They're probably got a little bit more style in you. And I'm going to go with Harvest Prep, mostly because their coaching staff usually always has some great style. Now that the Temptations, the Dayton Dunbar staff with Pete Poulin and the boys have kind of, there's still some of that at Trotwood, but the originals at Dunbar, I'm going to have to give that to Harvest Prep. Now they're really in unison too. They're always in unison with the claps and the D defense stuff. So I'm going to take them in with me. Then everybody knows you got that one wild character that's with you. Oh, you always have the wild character. And I'm going to bring Sandusky with me, because Sandusky's going to be wild. All right, I thought about Garfield Heights, but it was basically because of Sonny. But as a team, I got to, if I'm going to have somebody that's just wild with me, Sandusky's coming in with me. And then you got to have a closer. And OG's got a closer. All right, so we're going to bring Colin White, and his squad's going to come in with us. So those are the 5 teams that are coming in with me to the VIP lounge, gentlemen.
That's great.
I told you I put way too much thought into it.
Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed in myself, man. Yeah, you went a little outside the box. I probably could have done the same. That's fun, though.
Yeah.
I like these introductory questions.
All right, so let's recap last week. So let's start here with the battle in the 7-4-0, which was at Shawnee State. Roth, I believe you were on hand Saturday. Is that correct?
Yeah, Saturday and Sunday.
Oh, okay. So what you got? What came out of there for you?
Yeah, I'll get started with the recap. So both days you had 4 boys games. On Saturday you had 3 girls games. On Sunday you had 1 girls game. Shout out Proctorville Fairland girls. They get up and down the court, really run in transition, can really score the basketball. A lot of boys teams around the state could be watching film on Proctorville Fairland girls, because they could learn a thing or two on how to score the basketball, especially early this year. We've been struggling to score the ball, Ohio. Maybe it's just great defense by our teams, but in the battle in the 7-4-0, my first headline reaction was Olentangy Liberty looked very impressive. Their big guy, Tyler Kropp, was excellent. They also have a sophomore who's committed to Louisville for baseball as a pitcher. They take down one of West Virginia's top teams in Huntington High, and that was just a solid win for the Patriots. And then a couple Southeast versus Southeast matchups. Fairland and Fedhawk beat some of the top teams around Southeast Ohio. Fairland took down Unioto in boys action. Fairland was at this event for both the boys and the girls, and Fedhawk got a quality win over Lucasville Valley. And then you had 2 Columbus teams avoid upset. Bishop Hartley goes to overtime against North Adams, but Hartley is able to grind out a victory at the end. They were down 4 points with under 2 minutes to play, find a way to get to overtime and get a win. I thought the Callaway brothers were very impressive. And North Adams, it's not just Branson Copus, who was fantastic. Junior guard Jace Rothwell looked much improved, and North Adams might be the team to beat in Division III in Southeast Ohio. They have a huge game against Mimford on Tuesday. Another Columbus team that came down to Portsmouth was Harvest Prep, and they were tied with Wheelersburg with about 4 minutes to go, but Prep's depth was just a little bit too much. They've just got a lot of bodies that they can throw out at you. And Khalil Daniels struggled with foul trouble, had 4 fouls, and I believe only 2 points heading into the fourth quarter. I think he ended the game with 11 points, scoring 9 in the fourth quarter. A couple offensive rebound finishes, and 1, just bringing that toughness. And I honestly think if Wheelersburg was able to foul Daniels out early in the fourth quarter, you might have seen the Pirates get the upset victory, but Daniels made enough plays at the end of the game, and Harvest Prep gets the victory. And finally, New Albany, after getting blown out earlier in the week against Olentangy Orange, they bounce back, get a quality victory over Minford, and really controlled that game from start to finish.
Roth, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it was last week's show we were talking about it. I caught a little bit of that game with Wheelersburg and Harvest Prep, and if you watched like the first 5 minutes, it was like, oh boy, this could go south quick. But Wheelersburg just seems to find a way to like muck it up, and they just get physical with you, and they play really hard, and then before you know it, like they're right in the game again, and it's tied, and it's like you think they're down 15 and the game is tied. But I think that's just a testament to those kids, that because they've changed coaches several times here in the last 10 years, and it's still the same kids. Wheelersburg just has tough kids, football, basketball, baseball. But credit teams like Harvest Prep for going down and playing in events like this, and they'll play anybody. Mike Bates, Afrocentric, he'll play anybody. And Hartley, Andreas James going down there and getting a nice win. I think people are going to see later in the season that win over North Adams was a really good win.
Yeah, great crowd support from Wheelersburg as well. I thought that they probably had the most engaged crowd. Not too far for them to travel, but
right.
Still going to a neutral site, $15 get in at the door, and the Wheelersburg fans were not skimping. It was a packed house at Shawnee State.
All right, TJ, you were at the Holy Grounds Classic this weekend.
Yeah, it was. So the Holy Grounds Classic was put together by Chris Walker and Paul Ross, both guys who did an event last year at St. V that me and Roth were at. They've done a great job. They treat media well. It's always organized. Games are on time. So I wanted to give a quick shout out to them. The event kicked off with St. V going against Moeller. It was a 145 game. So I want to give credit to Moeller. I'm assuming they made the trip up in the morning, down 2 starters with Kingston Land and A.J. McBride still being out due to injury. Both are expected to be back in January. For St. V, it was one of those games where I'm honestly not sure if they could have played any better. They shot the absolute leather off the basketball for the first 3.5 quarters. Guys like Jason Walker and, Rayshawn Hamilton, Noah Chambers, guys just made really tough shots, and, they were moving the basketball. Moeller did a great job of hanging around. Senior Eric Mahaffey, Akron commit, was great. I thought he checked a lot of boxes, kind of impacted the game in a few different ways. Junior Alex Kazanecki, who I think is going to be one of the breakout players, not only in Southwest Ohio, but Ohio in general. He was great. 6'5", kind of like a stretch forward. Shoots a beautiful ball, man. It's really fluid, shot ready off the catch. He made a bunch of timely shots. Junior Roman Mason probably had the biggest play of the game. I believe Moeller was up 2 or maybe down 2. He got an on-ball steal, turned it into a layup with about 1.5 minutes or so to go, and that just kind of edged it out. But it was what you would have expected from 2 of the better programs in Ohio. Just a very well-played, well-coached high school basketball game. One of the cleaner games that I feel like I've watched so far this year. Next up was CVCA going up against Brush. Coach Matt Futch obviously, lost Darren Peterson from a year ago. Had a few other seniors that, were in that 2023 class that have moved on as well. But they actually got what some would consider would be an upset win over Brush. I thought Coach Fletcher's group was awesome to watch. I tweeted it out a few days ago. They were just really refreshing. The guys competed. They'd get down 5 or 6. They'd hang in there, cut it to 1, go down 6 or 8, and they'd be right back in it. Their guard play, led by senior LaBelle Sharp, combined with what Coach Fletch likes to do with his toughness, I thought it was just a great, great game played by CBCA. Really well-coached, disciplined group that he has there. Next up was probably the game that I was intrigued by the most on paper. You had Lutheran West scoring off against Frederick Douglass out of the Atlanta area. Frederick Douglass on paper, loaded. Every starter was 6'2" and up, multiple scholarship-level players. And one thing I learned just from, traveling on the grassroots AAU circuit, going to some national events, is a lot of these teams down south just have kids with physical profiles that we just don't see very often in Ohio. It seems like guys that in Atlanta, there's just 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", long, strong, athletic kids just walking on every block. So, for Douglas was a team that I like to call them all airport teams. That when they step off the plane, they look the part. So the first half, Lutheran West kind of jumped out on them. Coach Duke, I think, deserves a lot of credit, man. When we talk about some of the best coaches in Northeast Ohio, he's obviously young. His name, doesn't get brought up in those conversations nearly as much as it should. I thought he was great. I thought he put on an absolute clinic. He's got great guard play with seniors Jason Levis and Derek Fairley. Tino and senior Dylan Barchak were great, made a bunch of shots. I think they combined for over 30 points, probably hit about 6 or 7 combined threes. And one thing I learned is that while Ohio teams aren't accustomed to seeing teams that look quite like Frederick Douglass isn't quite, prepared to go against teams that play like Lutheran West and play like some of our top teams in Ohio do. Lutheran West was great. Derek Fairley is a kid who hasn't been at the top of the scoring leaders for them these first few games, but I think he's just kind of the straw that stirs the drink, as Stubbs would like to say. Lutheran East got a good win against Holy Name. They moved on to 4-0. Jesse McCullough finished with 20 points and earned what feels like his 5th tournament MVP of the year so far. Chris Hill, a kid who I've been really high on so far this year, the freshman guard, he was great. Max Ballin from Holy Name, I believe he had 16 points at halftime, with just making a bunch of really, really tough shots off the dribble. Chris Hill switched on to him in the second half, really did a great job of limiting his touches and making him work for it. I believe he finished with 23 or 24 points. Lutheran East was able to walk away with the W. Overall, it was a really good event, though. I think 4 games is a perfect number. A lot of times with these events, you get 5, 6, 7 games. Most people aren't crazy like me and Rob. They come in, they watch 1 game or 2 games, then they head out. But sometimes when you're watching 6, 7, 8 games, it can really drag on. So it was kind of refreshing just to watch 4 games, be in the gym for a few hours, and then be able to hit the road back home and still get back at a pretty decent time.
Well, TJ, while you were talking about Lutheran West, it's a good segue to first we'll do our players of the week. And TJ, I'll start with you. Your player of the week this week was?
It was Derek Fairley, the kid who I just talked about. So defensively, I think he's been phenomenal. At 6'2", he's got long arms, really quick hands. Kid seems to take 1 or 2 charges almost every night. The thing that's jumped out to me is how unselfish he is. Never afraid to make that extra pass. I thought he's done a much better job of just kind of channeling his pace this year, learning to pick his spots, take better shots. And he's a guy who's probably not going to ever lead them in scoring, maybe a game or 2 here and there. But to me, he's been arguably their most valuable player, just with his effort on the defensive end and how he's been able to just kind of impact and do so many different things for them, whether it's, sliding over and running the show, whether it's, checking the other team's best player, whether it's getting his hands dirty on the defensive end or, making open catch and shoot shots. He's been a bit of a stock riser for me so far in these first few weeks of the season.
Roth?
My player of the week is Tyler Kropp of Olentangy Liberty. He scored 16 in a conference road win over Dublin Kaufman on Friday. And then on Saturday, scored 27 points in their victory over Huntington, West Virginia at the Battle in the 7-4-0. I just think that Kropp is one of the most talented bigs in Ohio. His hands are excellent. He does a great job catching the ball. Even when the pass isn't perfect, he goes to the basketball. And then once he catches it on the block, does a great job of being able to shoot with both hands with his back to the basket. You can't really force him one direction. And his passing ability also allows Olentangy Liberty to give it to him either in the low block or at the elbow. And he was able to hit cutters on backdoor plays, kick it out to shooters. He just unlocks a lot for the Olentangy Liberty offense. So he's my player of the week, already holds a handful of Division I offers, and continues to show why mid-major programs from all over the region are interested in recruiting him.
Yeah, for me, I went with Luke Sanders, 6'3" junior out of Cincinnati Hills Christian Academy. This is a kid that averaged about 25 points a game last year as a sophomore. He's just a little bit below 28 this year. He had a big week though. He scored 29 in a win over Purcell Marion, and then he had 28 against Purcell, and then 29 against Loveland. Both wins. They're undefeated on the year. He's averaging about 28 points a game, about 6 rebounds, and 2.3 assists. So Luke Sanders, and he's shooting the ball at a pretty solid clip too. I mean, a lot of times when guys are averaging that amount of points, sometimes you're just shot jacking it, and it's very inefficient. But he's making a lot of the shots that he's taking. So Luke Sanders out of CHCA is my player of the week.
And fun fact about Luke, sophomore year, I believe he led the entire city of Cincinnati in scoring. And it must run in the family because his dad is the all-time leading scorer at Northern Kentucky.
Yeah, he can put the ball in the basket for sure. Roth, who was your team of the week?
So my team of the week, I was actually thinking about putting who TJ put at his team of the week, but he beat me to the punch in the Google Doc. So we're not going to double up there. I went with Winton Woods as my team of the week. They went 2-0, got 2 conference victories, opened up the week on Wednesday with a 30-point victory over Milford, just taking care of business. And then they followed it up on Friday night with a 2-point win on the road against Kings. Kings was one of the teams that shared the conference title in the ECC last year. Winton Woods looking to take it this season. And Tyler McKinley had 24 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists. And senior point guard Sean Harmon had 24 points on 6 3-pointers in their victory Friday against Kings. So Winton Woods is my team of the week.
For me, I actually went with Westerville North. So they went undefeated last week, 3 wins over Gahanna Lincoln, who was one of our teams of the week from the first episode. They had a blowout win over Franklin Heights, and then they beat Westerville Central 69-64. As a team, I got to see quite a bit in the summer, and I just thought the guard play, Micah Young, Ty Perkins, and then the freshman Tyson Perkins was just going to be so key for them, especially late in the season. But I think that's also been shown to be pretty pivotal early on, especially with their work on the defensive end. All 3 of those kids, just kind of tough-nosed, gritty guys, all do different things with the basketball. Ty Perkins is a really quick, shifty guy that can get a paint touch almost whenever he feels like it. Micah Young is kind of a jack-of-all-trades guard, really good defender, can play off the ball, can slide over and play the point guard. They've been great, and I think to get 2 big wins like that over Gahanna Lincoln, Westerville Central, from the footage I saw, the environment in both those games looked to be a lot of fun. Usually we don't get those type of environments in Ohio this early on in the season. And I think it's key for them. They actually have a really big game coming up, I believe, this Friday against Delaware Hayes. So I think that's going to be a really good measuring stick for both teams.
Yeah, TJ, when you cue up the tape on Westerville North, first thing that jumps to me is the passion and intensity they play with, and that's always a sign to me that this is a team. I mean, especially when you have some talent like they do, this is a team that could make a deep run. When you play with that type of fire on every possession and passion, it just seems like that team is kind of together. I think you're right on with Westerville North. That's a team that could be really dangerous come tournament time. That's a real nice win over Westerville Central. I'm interested to see how that game with Hayes shakes out. I think that should be really good.
This is kind of not a bit of a rant, but something pretty related to this. I think we put, not us specifically, but just in general, I think we often put too much stock into June games. And what I mean by that, I got to see Westerville North not only at Midwest Live, but I got to watch them at Ohio State's team camp as well. And just being honest, quite frankly, they weren't not very good in the month of June. But I think it just is a testament to nobody's very good in the month of June. I think we all need to kind of pump the brakes on summer basketball and using how teams look in June to kind of, project how they're going to look in January or February. Because I really don't think it has any merit on how teams are going to play throughout the season. So that's just something that was on my mind. Like, let's just figure it out in June. Let's see who we got, what they can do, what the rotation looks like. Let's not put as much stock in the wins and losses in the month of June, please.
Absolutely concur. My team of the week is Warren JFK. This is a Division IV team sleeping up in that Warren, Youngstown area up there. This is a team that got a really nice win last week over a good D3 Cardinal Mooney team. Then they blew out Lowellville. I believe that was Friday night. But I just kind of wonder if this Warren JFK team isn't a team that if you remove Richmond Heights, if that is not the team that would show up in Dayton from the Division IV ranks up that way. I think there goes the lights, ladies and gentlemen. I think they're the team. When you look at all the pieces that they have returning, all the production that they have returning, I just think that this could be one of those seasons where it's like, man, what could have been. And again, there's a lot that could happen between now and then, but you just kind of wonder with that team, is that the team that could have been the team at Dayton?
And quick shout out to Coach K over there at Warren JFK, man. Not only is he just like a great guy, like, I don't think I've ever met anyone who's had a bad thing to say about him, but he's a phenomenal coach. They're a team that I don't get to see quite as often. I don't make it out to the Youngstown Warren area as much as I would like. But last year I did get a chance to catch a 3-team scrimmage. It was Warren JFK, Badger, and Youngstown Ursuline. And I thought Warren JFK did more than hold their own in that scrimmage. They had a junior who I liked at that time named Nick Ryan. He was like a 6'2" guard. Yep. Just kind of did a lot for them. Really set the table for guys. They got a bunch of kids that can flat out shoot it. And Nick Ryan kind of picked his spots, knew when to score, when to pass. I just thought they played together, and they played really well in the small sample size that I got to see a year ago.
So those are our players of the week, teams of the week here on episode 3. Let's move on to what to watch this week. Some notable events around the Buckeye State. We've got the 5 C's Classic at Capital University. We got the Coach Q Is that QP Classic?
Don't ever disrespect QPs like that.
How do you not know what QPs is?
Oh my gosh. All right,
yeah.
so Stubbs, here we go. If you're ever in Lima, it is an unwritten rule that you have to go to QP's Burgers.
Okay.
It's like an old school diner style spot. There's like 5 or 6 of them spread throughout Lima. I don't think they're anywhere else though. And it is great. Like burgers are good. Surprisingly, their chocolate malts are like phenomenal. I've heard people say that their pies are good.
Yeah.
I've never had a bad thing from there. Anytime I go out that way to watch Lima Senior, always make a stop at QP's, no matter what day of the week it is. Highly recommend. I'm sure I'm not telling you guys something you don't already know. For those of you who are up that way, if you're not up that way and you're planning on being up that way, stop at QP's for your boy.
Yep, and give us some sponsorship. That would be at Lima Senior, the house Coach Q. We got the Danny Young Classic at Shaker Heights, sponsored by Chaz Wolf. We have the East versus West Challenge at Warrensville Heights. The Hall of Fame Hardwood Classic at Massillon, Washington, and the Ohio Play-by-Play Classic. That is now at Woodland Gym at CSU. Gentlemen, I know you're going to be at a few of these. Roth, where are we going to find? What events are we going to find you at this weekend?
Yeah, so I'm going to be in the gym on both Saturday and Sunday, starting off with the Hall of Fame City Hardwood Classic in Massillon. These are a lot of teams that I probably won't see if I don't go to this event. So taking a chance to see some under the radar teams and just catch a lot of the teams in that Akron-Canton area, a couple Federal League teams, a couple smaller schools. And I think it's going to be a quality event to find a couple sleepers and even have one of my games of the week in there, tipping off at 6:30. And then on Sunday, I'm going to make my way down to Columbus for the 5Cs Classic. Got a couple really interesting games. Reynoldsburg St. Ignatius really jumps off the page as a big game to watch. And the hospitality room at the 5Cs Classic is high major plus every single year. So not gonna be missing out on that.
Yeah, I want to put kind of a spotlight on a few of these other events as well. It seems like always around this time during the season, we always just get a plethora of events. On Saturday, Sunday, you got to try and figure out where you're going, who you need to see, where you want to go. So one event over at the new Warrensville Heights High School and Gym, you have the East versus West Challenge, which is put on by Paul and Chris. Same people who just put together the Holy Grounds Classic at St. V. You have Hawken against Spire, Holy Name against Gilmore Academy, Lake Catholic against Maple Heights, Toledo Whitmer against Glenville, which should be a really fun up-tempo game. And then you have Padua against Warrensville Heights. Quick shout out to Michi Johnson over at Warrensville Heights. They got a big win over Maple Heights. I believe it was last week. This week on Thursday, they travel to Garfield Heights. So you got a little brother-on-brother action with Michi versus Sonny. Their first of many over the next few years. So the East versus West Challenge would be a good way for Northeast Ohio fans to see Toledo Whitmer. On paper, one of the more talented teams in Division I. You have the Ohio Play-by-Play Classic at Woodland Gym, which is the old CSU gym. That is where I will be at. So the first game, you got St. Ed's against Amani Christian out of the Pittsburgh area. You got Lutheran West against Akron Bookdale, which is a rematch of last year's Division II state championship. At 3:30, you got Winton Woods against Lutheran East. So a pretty intriguing matchup there with Tyler McKinley, Cincinnati commit, going up against Lutheran East, Jesse McCulloch, who's headed to Michigan State. Garfield Heights, who just got picked as the number one team in Northeast Ohio by Matt Gould, going up against Huntington Prep. So Darren Peterson, one of the most highly regarded prospects in the country, regardless of class, kind of making his homecoming back to Northeast Ohio to play, one of the, if not the top team in Division I in Garfield Heights. Then you have Richmond Heights and St. Ignatius. Richmond Heights just dropped another game this past weekend to St. Joseph's Prep out at I believe it was the Kobe Bryant Classic at Lower Marion High School. They have to turn around and play St. Ignatius, who is playing really good basketball at the moment. They've beaten, off the top of my head, I know they've beaten Medina and then had a 13-point win, I believe, over Louisville just this past Friday. So, yeah, it's all gas, no brakes for Richmond Heights, and they got a sharp turn coming up. So hopefully they can get both hands on the wheel and figure it out. The Danny Young Classic, you got Toledo Scott, Beechwood, CCC, Toledo St. John, University School, who's been playing really well to start the season against CVCA, and then Afrocentric against Garfield Heights Trinity. And then, like we mentioned earlier, you got the Coach QP Classic, a game there that I'm actually really intrigued by. It's one of the games this weekend that I wish I could see just as a fan, not even as a scout. But on the 16th, which is Saturday at 7:30 p.m., you got Ottawa Glandorf against Shelby. So you have one of the top 10 teams in Division III going up against one of the top 10 teams in Division II. Shelby has Alex Bruscotter, a Wright State commit. Ottawa Glandorf obviously has Colin White. Two guys who played AAU together for a few years, have a really good rapport, but I do think the gloves will be off on Saturday. I expect those two guys to just really get after it. It should be a fun game for those who plan to be in attendance over at Lima Senior High School.
Speaking of Lima Senior, I do want to give a big shout out to Toledo Scott. They knocked off Lima Senior this week. And then they turned around and played Pickerington North as well, which they weren't able to win that. But that's a big win for Scott over Lima Senior. That's a real quality win. So shout out to Toledo Scott. Some other contests just around the state this week. On Friday, you got Big Walnut at Westerville South. You got Delaware Hayes at Westerville North. Pick Central at Gahanna. You got Canton McKinley against Glen Oak. You got Warrensville Heights against Garfield Heights. I'm guessing this is Archbishop Hoban at Louisville.
Yep.
Sycamore at Mason, Kettering Alder at Bishop Fenwick, and Toledo Whitmer. That's Tuesday against Lima Senior. All right. So with that being said, TJ, your games of the week. Who do you got as your games of the week this week?
So I just mentioned that OG Shelby game. So obviously that's a game that I'm excited just to see how it plays out. Richmond Heights and St. Ignatius to me has a lot of implications on Northeast Ohio basketball. I know they're in two different divisions, but these are two teams on paper, in my opinion, are probably the number one and number two most talented rosters in Ohio. I think Reynoldsburg would probably have a say in that. But I'm just very curious to see how that game turns out. Richmond Heights obviously had a ton of hype coming into the season. Hasn't quite been able to put the things together yet. And then St. Ignatius, who seems to be on the opposite end of the spectrum, who's kind of playing really good basketball early on. And they're going to bump heads. I'm going to be curious to see how that goes. And yeah, that would be it. Those would be and then Garfield Heights, Huntington Prep. I just think there's going to be a lot of high-level talent, high-end talent on the floor in that one. Marcus Johnson and Darren Peterson, two of the premier guards in the country. And it should be a lot of fun. Also, two of the most entertaining fathers in the country as well. So I'll be curious to see the tweets and the Facebook posts flying about 9 p.m. on Saturday night.
Mr. Roth.
So I got two games of the week. I'm going to be in attendance for both of these games. First one, Glen Oak versus Menor. We already discussed on Thursday, Glen Oak is going to be hosting Canton McKinley. So I'm curious to see how they respond. And Menor on Friday is hosting Medina. And then less than 24 hours later is going to have to take on Glen Oak. So two teams that are going to be coming off games against conference opponents that are definitely going to challenge them. You could argue both these teams are favorites in their conference, or at least in the top 2 or 3, going up against other teams that are near the top projected teams in the conference. So quick turnaround for both of these teams. You've got some talented seniors on both ends. They're not really going to be guarding each other, but Ja'Cory Lipkins and Ian Iapolo should be a really fun battle. And then on Sunday, it's another quick turnaround. Reynoldsburg against St. Ignatius. Ignatius, about 24 hours after they're going to take on Richmond Heights, they're going to travel 2 hours down I-71 to take on Reynoldsburg at Capital University. And these are 2 of the more talented teams in Ohio. But what's going to be interesting is Ignatius has a lot of senior talent. You look at their forwards, Sam Springer, Reese Robinson, Jack Sapolnik. Obviously, you've got the junior duo of Quinn Wodke and Damon Fryrie against a Reynoldsburg squad that, outside of Noah Smith and Saron Callaway-White, is playing a lot of juniors and sophomores. So can that experience of St. Ignatius be ready to go in what's going to be a tough 24-hour stretch for Cam Joyce and company? I could see Ignatius going 2-0, 1-1, or 0-2 this weekend. So should be some competitive games at both of those. I'm really excited to watch how each of them play out.
Yeah, those games that you've mentioned are all going to be must-see. Unfortunately, I mean, you just can't get to everything, but you guys definitely do your best at trying to do that. I got a 5-pack for you. First one that I had here was Tuesday night special. This is a big rivalry game. Garaway at Highland on Tuesday night. I believe this is only going to be Garaway's second game, long football run to the state semifinals. So they will get at Highland on Tuesday night. Highland took a 4-point loss to Division I Dover the other night. Highland right now is without their leading scorer, Sammy Detweiler. He'll be out for, I believe, like the first 7 games of the season. But, you know, Highland is still going to be very, very competitive.
I like that kid a lot, by the way. I only got to see him one game, and I believe that was down at the state tournament. But, I mean, you're talking about a guy that just knows how to play, can shoot the basketball. And I thought he was a very just kind of gifted passer, had a natural feel for how to play. So I'm hoping that they make another deep run. That way I can get another chance to see him. I did not know that he was out, but that is good to know.
Yeah, so that should be a good one Tuesday. Also Tuesday, Whitmer at Lima Senior. I think that's going to be a very talented game on paper. Cedarville against Leesburg Fairfield. That game is Saturday night. Those are 2 undefeated teams. I also like this game. We've got Maumee Valley Country Day at Toledo Christian. That is a Saturday night game. And then Wayne Trace against Convoy Crestview, I think, is going to be a really good game Saturday night as well. So that's a 5-pack for
It's
you.
a loaded weekend, man.
Yeah. Games everywhere.
It's like regardless of what region of the state you're in, it seems like there's either an event or just a pair of really just big-time games. So definitely looking forward to seeing the coverage and just kind of seeing how some of this stuff turns out. I think with it being as early on as it is, I expect to see a lot of, kind of, I guess, upset wins, some things that you wouldn't normally see maybe in a month or 2.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention an event that a good friend of mine is putting on. It's the Buckeye 8 Challenge, put on by Justin Clifford, who is the former head coach at Harrison Central. He's now the athletic director at St. Clairsville. But they are playing at the beautiful Harrison Central facility out there in Cadiz. If you've never seen it, it is unbelievable. If you go out there, make sure you check out their football press box as well. It is unbelievable, the facilities they have out there. I believe
I've
TJ.
actually been to the Harrison Central football press box. I was watching Kobe Mitchell against your St. Clairsville Red Devils. And what's the trophy that they play for?
The Coal Bucket. Yeah,
Yep.
they play for the Coal Bucket out there. But yeah, just an incredible facility. So if you're around that way, in that area, they have a nice event going on there all day Saturday as well.
Speaking of beautiful facilities, this is a question I got asked on Twitter. Shout out to my guys, Lee and Sammy. They do a great job covering Stark County basketball, particularly the Federal League. But I didn't get a chance to respond to it, but they tagged me in a tweet, I believe it was yesterday, and just said, hey, what are your, besides, the Canton Memorial Fieldhouse, what's your most underrated gym in Ohio to catch a game? And the first place that comes to mind for me is a place I haven't been in quite some time. I spent a lot of time and hours there when I was in middle school going to watch our high school kids play. But the Struthers Fieldhouse, I don't know if either one of you guys have ever been there before, but that is one of my favorite places to watch a game. I just love the lighting in there, how it's like dark everywhere except for the floor. It just makes it almost look like a spotlight. Just a really cool, unique, big gym. So yeah, shout out to Struthers Fieldhouse. Hopefully I can make it out there at some point sooner rather than later.
I like Waverly. Waverly is a gym that they got like two sections. You got like a lower level, which is close, and then you got the upper level. It's just always a gym where if you get a lot of fans in there, they've hosted all-day events before, especially when Trey Robertson and company were winning 20 games a season. Their crowd really brought it. So Waverly is always one place in Southeast Ohio that when I saw I was going to a game there, I was like, all right, nice. This is a fun gym to go to.
Yeah, one of the gyms on my bucket list, I know it's awesome, is the Supreme Court up at OG. That place is hard to get
And they packed that place out.
hard to get into no matter what night. One of my favorite gyms, and they have a new gym now, but one of my favorite gym was Winland Gymnasium at Zanesville. The ceiling was so low, it was just so electric. And you're talking about I'm talking Zanesville teams that were ranked in the country, top 5 in the country.
Kevin Martin.
But even before him, Zanesville, I believe, was maybe 1 or 2 in the country back in the 90s, which if you watch them now, it's like, whoa, what happened? But that place was just absolutely electric. They used to hold a lot of the district events there in the East District. So, but obviously they have a new gym there now, but that's one of my favorites.
This was a place I've only been to one time. I was really young. So I have kind of a vague memory of it. But I'm assuming you've probably been there to cover some games. How was the pit over at Worcester Triway? You ever go to a home game there?
I have never been to a game there, and back mid 2000s.
The Robins.
Yeah, I had a couple opportunities to go to, and I wish I would have went. They were obviously really good. Of course, Randy Montgomery was there, and they were rolling when he was there. Then Keith Snoddy took over and got them to the state tournament a couple times when they had the Roteman brothers. They had a nice run of talent. But yeah, I would definitely love, shout out to, I believe his name is Andrew Markham. He goes by Pitman Stats on Twitter. He's a big Worcester Triway guy, big baseball guy.
I remember him from my Yappy days.
Yeah. I think he was an old JJ Huddle guy too. So
yeah, he's been around for a while.
Yeah, he just likes ball. He likes ball.
I used to hear horror stories about the pit. So Roth, apparently this gym is smaller than regulation, is what I was told. And they used to just full court press teams. there would be like, people would like try and say that there's like dead spots on the floor. You dribble and the ball doesn't come back. Like, people had nightmares about playing at that place.
Yeah.
Definitely something I need to go check out now, like as an adult. But I just was curious if you had ever been there back when that place used to really rock.
Well, let's move on to our buy and sell. We'll get that in before we have our guests jump on here in just a little bit. First question, gentlemen, for the buy and sell this weekend or this week. This is one that I came up with. I was just kind of thinking about this when I saw a result from this past week. In the new landscape of college basketball, and you guys can kind of take this however you want, do you think it's going to be more difficult for powerhouse D2s to stay on top? And what I mean by like the West Liberties of the world, with the way the landscape is now, do you think it's going to be more difficult for those teams to stay on top?
I'm selling. I actually think it's going to be much easier. And the reason why I say that is I love when we have like these kind of scouting conversations here on the pod. This is really like my world. I love to step foot in this place. So it's cool when we get to have these kind of conversations. But because of the transfer portal, Division II schools now have access to talent and have access to kids that they would not have been able to get 5-6 years ago. We had just talked last week about, one of our alumni spotlights was Kobe Mitchell, who transferred from Akron down to Walsh. Very rarely were you seeing kids transfer at the high rate that they obviously are now, quite frankly, because when you transferred, you had to sit out. You weren't as appealing because you can't help me right away. It's like if you want to go to the prom with the hot girl in school, she says, no, I won't go with you this year, but I'll go with you next year. That doesn't help you out. You need a date for Saturday. So the transfer portal has made things so much easier because now these guys can come in right away. They don't have to sit. And because of that, we've seen a major trickle down. And a lot of high school kids who would have went to the Horizon, maybe bottom of the MAC, are now getting some low major Division II interest. And that's just because a lot of the low major and mid majors, they can't survive and win off of high school kids. So I think Division IIs are actually getting much better talent now than they would have. And I think you can say the same thing about Division IIIs as well. A lot of those borderline scholarship level kids have now become priority Division III kids. And it's just a major trickle down effect that has obviously impacted and affected everybody, regardless of what level you are and where you coach.
Yeah, I don't think I'm as strongly selling this take as TJ is, just for the simple fact that you're going to have to re-recruit a lot more often. I mean, you look at a team like Nova Southeastern, they win the national title last year. You have a kid go to Georgia. You have a kid go to Memphis. You have a kid go to College of Charleston. You have a kid go, I forget where Graziani went, but it was some other low major program. And like TJ mentioned, you have the ability to now get Division I talent to come down, but I'm sure it's frustrating when Nova did a great job scouting a kid like Kobe Rogers, and then obviously you win a national title with him, but you kind of knew that was your last ride, and he was just a sophomore. So you got to replace that talent. So while you are able to get a lot of kids on the trickle down, you're also going to be seeing a lot of your best players say, thanks for what you did for me my first 2-3 years, but now I want to play with the big boys in Division I and have a shot to make it to March Madness. So it's just going to look a little different. I mean, you look at West Liberty this year, and I mean, they don't have an insanely talented team, especially compared to the past couple of years, but their kids just play so hard. They're so well conditioned, which is really their superpower, is how well conditioned they are. And they're still finding a way to win games. So I think it'll be interesting to see how the teams that have had kids consistently get poached by Division I schools, how they respond against some other Division II teams that maybe Division I programs weren't as aggressively pursuing in the transfer portal. So it'll be an interesting thing to monitor, but I definitely don't buy that it's going to be much more difficult for them to stay on top. You just might have to readjust your roster year over year instead of every 2-3 years.
Yeah, things are just so much more fluid nowadays. When I speak to a lot of college coaches, quite frankly, when I ask them, hey, what are you looking for? What do you need? They have no idea. You know, kids that you think are going to stay end up leaving. Kids that you think are going to leave end up staying. You don't know exactly how good your incoming freshmen are going to be until you get there. So they're almost recruiting almost a day-by-day basis, man. They don't know what they need until they know. And speaking of West Liberty, I feel like they've done a pretty good job of, you know, finding a balance between bringing in high school kids, you know, talented high school kids along with transfers. But last year, you know, they were a national runner-up. I believe 7 or 8 out of their top 10 guys were transfers, were not kids that they recruited out of high school. And I think that's how a lot of these top-end Division II schools, that's the direction that they're heading in right now.
Yeah, I think what I was kind of thinking when I posed the question is more maybe like where Roth was coming, like, yeah, you're kind of like swapping players. You're going to lose some when you're at that high end to some D1s. You're going to get some. But I think it's difficult, though, year after year to just bring a bunch of new guys in, throw them all in a bowl, and come out with the perfect recipe. Putting a team together is difficult with culture and chemistry. I mean, you look at West Liberty in particular. We'll just use them as an example. You lose Dalton Bolin and Patrick Robinson to the College of Charleston, and they are key cogs in a 31-win team last year for Pat Kelsey's team. This past year, they're runner-up. Player of the year. One of the Player of the Year candidates, Bryce Butler, at West Liberty. He goes to College of Charleston after a brilliant campaign with the Hilltoppers. So I just think it's going to be taxing to do that every single year, which is why I don't think the longevity of coaches in this culture is going to be very long. You might be able to win, but it's definitely a absolute 24/7 grind to get what you want.
Hey, Stub, did you send over that link?
No, I was having a hard time getting to the screen. Can you get to the screen where the link is from the document?
Hold on, I should be able to invite somebody. Yeah, I should be able to.
I can send it.
I'm sending it right now. I think I got it.
Okay. Because I copied the...
Yeah, my Gmail is loading right now.
So, Roth, let me, which one are you sending?
I'm sending it right
Okay.
now.
So, Roth, I'll hit you with this while we're have a question here. Ohio. These lights, I'll tell you what, man.
You're so stoned.
Yeah, we were talking about this yesterday a little bit, and it got me thinking. I've thought about this for a while. Ohio should have a playoff tournament system that makes the regular season mean more. So, for example, not every team should enter the postseason. Basically, I'm looking to make winning matter. As opposed to, like, right now you have a Richmond Heights team. I mean, obviously, when you play Newport, Reynoldsburg, and St. Joe's out of the Philly area, they're 0-3. And I feel like right now, Richmond. This is what I'm comparing Richmond Heights to. They're like that friend that never gives you the time of day until no one else is around, and then they want to be your friend. And that's kind of how I feel like the friend is Division 4. They don't really want to be Division 4's friend. But once there's nobody else around, then then they're okay hanging out with the D4 ranks.
Yeah, so I buy this just because, I mean, when's the last time you saw a team below 500 win a district? Maybe one or two in the past decade. I'm sure there's a couple, but it can't happen very often. Really, you're just extending the amount of games in the postseason. A lot of them are pretty pointless. Another big problem here is allowing the top seeds to not take a bye. So instead of the top seed taking a bye and then facing the winner of the 8 versus 9 game, instead they play the 9 seed, they beat them by 40, they play the 10 seed, beat them by 40, and then you finally get to the district semis. So, I mean, I definitely would be in favor of a system where only the top 8 teams by RPI per district make it. I think that is more than enough teams that would be able to qualify. You look at most districts, they have somewhere between 11 and 13 teams. I think that districts with 8 teams would be fine. So
yeah, I mean, I would love to see these regions set up like it is in football.
Like
Yeah.
ahead of,
What's that?
how is it set up in football? Someone enlighten me.
So you got the 7 divisions, and you got 4 regions in every division. So so it's numbered like Region 1 through Region 28. And
Okay.
so if you went then you'd have like the top 8 teams from each region, making the tournament, or top 12, or whatever you want to go with. I just think, like, I'm just a big fan of making winning matter. Like, I get you're trying to get your team right, and you're going out and you're trying to play all the different styles you can, but at some point I feel like winning should matter.
I agree. I think both you guys hit the nail on the head. I don't really have a ton else to add to that. I just know that some of the excitement surrounding the tournament to me gets lost in those first 7 or 8 days. Just because, quite frankly, how bad some of those games are in the sectional tournament. So I would definitely be in favor of moving towards that direction, similar to how football does it here in Ohio.
All right, well, gentlemen, that wraps up our buy and sell for the week. We now have our first ever guest on the drive to Dayton, so there's no pressure here. I believe, Coach, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you are a Mount Vernon legend. 19.
I'm a Mount Vernon grad.
Okay, is this correct? 1992 first team All-American at Muskingum University?
Yeah, I guess that's a long time ago.
Hall of Famer, Muskie's Hall of Famer. A couple of my former teammates tell me that your mystique out there was still present when they were playing in the late 90s out there, so.
Yeah, it's the Muskingum friends, huh?
Yeah. Justin Clifford, former backcourt mate. I'm pretty sure he drove Coach Burson into retirement with the amount of shots that he took. But
nobody took more shots at Muskingum than I did. So I still have that record.
Well, we got Coach Moore here, the current head coach of the Reynoldsburg Raiders. Coach Moore has been a little bit of everywhere prior to his tenure here with the Raiders. So, Coach, before we even jump into this, why don't you give the audience a little bit of background of where you've been and what you've done prior to coming to Reynoldsburg?
When I graduated from Muskingum, my dad was a teacher and coach here in Ohio for 35 years, and his last 20 were at Mount Vernon. So he hired me as his freshman coach my first 2 years out. And then at the time, he was coaching a young man excuse me, a young man by the name of Aaron Brown. Well, Aaron's dad was the head coach at Kenyon College. And so I developed a relationship. His name is Bill Brown, and developed a pretty good relationship with Coach Brown. So when he had an opening, he asked me to join him, which I did. I knew I wanted to coach, and to be honest with you, I didn't think I wanted to coach at the high school level. I wanted to be a college coach and try and get to the Division I level if I could. But so I joined him for 2 years, and then he got the job at a Division II school out in Pennsylvania named California University of Pennsylvania. Probably a strange name to a lot of people. But I went out there with him, and we were out there for 4 years. And at the time, the head coach at Robert Morris, which is, in the Pittsburgh area as well, I got to know him pretty well. Well, he had a lot of success at Robert Morris and went to Eastern Michigan, and I was fortunate to go with him to Eastern Michigan. And that was from 2000 to 2002. And then when Tommy Amaker got the job at Michigan, I did not know him, but I had a pretty good friend that did know him. In fact, that friend is now the AD at Georgetown, and he called Tommy for me. And, Eastern Michigan and Michigan are probably about 15 minutes apart on the same road. So I drove down there and spent the day with him and the assistants and their staff, and was fortunate enough to for him to hire me. We got let go there in 2007. So I was at Bowling Green 07, 08. And then for the next 3 years, the guy that was the head coach at Eastern Michigan at that time, he and I were assistants together at Michigan. So he said, why don't you come back up here? And the reason I did this was because we couldn't sell our house in Ann Arbor when we got let go. So I was driving to Bowling Green every day, from Ann Arbor to Bowling Green every day, and obviously back. So I didn't want to leave Coach Orr at Bowling Green. He was a great guy, he's a great coach, but just made so much sense financially. Travel time, I was going to get to spend more time with my family. So went back to Eastern for 3 more years, and then down to Virginia Tech for 2, and then out to the Air Force Academy for 6. And now I'm back here where I grew up, and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, Coach, you said you didn't really have quite, any intentions on coming back to, or, coaching at the high school level at all. What kind of, I guess, motivated you to come back to Central Ohio and kind of get started over here?
Well, we came back here during COVID, and we were leaving the Air Force Academy, and I was 50 years old. And, I was a 25-year assistant. And the goal for me, TJ, when I started out was, I wanted to be a Division I head coach. And so now I'm 50, and I've been an assistant for 25 years. And sometimes you kind of got to reevaluate where you're at, maybe change your goals up a little bit. And it was a hard thing to do. I think I could have stayed in college basketball, but, me becoming a Division I head coach at that time was probably not going to happen. So, my wife's from Pennsylvania. I'm from here, and we talked about coming back and being closer to family. And so, again, when I went to Mount Vernon, TJ, Mount Vernon was in the OCC. So I played in this conference. My dad coached in this conference. I knew Reynoldsburg pretty well. I knew a lot of people here. So I thought, when I saw the job was available, I took a look at that one with a few others, and, obviously feel really fortunate to get this job and going on year 4 here now. But that was kind of the change of, mind that I had, my wife had, and we've got 3 boys, and, just, quality of life. I didn't see him much, when I was a college coach, and this has been great for that, spend more time with all of them, and it's really worked out that way.
The one thing when I kind of reflect back on that COVID time, that 2020, 2021, those 2 years, I just thought it's interesting that no matter who you were, what you did for a living, how much money you make, how much money you didn't make, that pandemic put all of us in the same boat. And I think all of us had to do a lot of self-reflection, figure out what our next steps were, had to really adjust on the fly. So I personally can relate a lot to what you just said about that. similar to Stubbs, I did a little bit of digging too. When once you said yes, I kind of did my Google searches trying to figure out just where you've been. I mean, you've touched, virtually every level possible, right? You've been Division III, Division II, mid-major, high major, and that's kind of one thing we stress and we talk about a lot is just how good each level of college basketball is. And I think you have a perspective that not a lot of high school coaches are fortunate enough to have just based off your experience there. So, do you think that's important, coaching high school players, just having the knowledge of just how good you have to be to play college basketball regardless of level?
Yeah, I talk to our guys all the time about that. And as you guys probably know, and, when I mention, hey, Capital or Otterbein or somebody like that, hey, they called me today about you. And they look at me like I've got three heads. And, I'm not going to play at that level. And, you got to be realistic with them. First of all, I tell them there are really, really good basketball players at the Division III level, especially in Ohio with the OAC and the NCAC. I said, you're going to be playing against a lot of really good players. You're going to be going to school at one of the best universities, colleges in the country. So it's still hard to, get them to wrap their head around that there is good basketball at the Division III level. But, I just tell them from my experience, I played at that level. I coached at that level. And so the only thing I can tell our guys is I'm just telling you what I've seen with my own eyes. And it's not, there's no, it should not be, you feel like you're lowering your standards if you play Division III basketball. And we've had some guys do that. Julian Heckman is at Otterbein now. Xavion Croft is at Muskingum. Josiah Mobley's at Wilberforce. So we've had, at this point, we have only the guys that have left here at the Division III level is the highest level that they've gone to. Now Noah Smith is committed to Tiffin next year, so that's Division II. But yeah, I just try and give them as much insight as I can, and that is there is really good basketball all over the country at all different levels.
Yeah, I think like what you said, obviously making the adjustment from coaching in college to high school, obviously the expectations are a lot different, right, in terms of the kids and the parents and just the way they think. And social media probably has even a bigger impact at the high school level than it does at the college level, just in terms of its influence on the way these kids think and how they feel. What would you say, just going from obviously 25 plus years of being in college to coming to the high school level, what would you say would be the biggest adjustment that you feel like you've had to make?
The speed of the game's a little different. Some of the rules are a little different. The length of the game is different. No shot clock, which I was used to for 25 minutes, for 25 years. So, and also, being a little more patient. I think the kids, appreciate that. But we're still demanding with those guys. We try and hold them accountable to what we want. But just, I think at this level, in fact, I know at this level now, after being here for 4 years, you can affect a young man's life a little bit more than you can once they get to college. And I guess just for instance, when I coached in the Big Ten and the ACC, like every kid that came to one of those schools thought they were going to play in the NBA. And I'm not saying they didn't care about academics. I'm not saying that at all. But what was first and foremost, in their minds was they were going to play in the NBA. And they worked like that. They wanted to get to that level. Now, again, these kids, and so I don't think you could have as much effect on as a kid when they're kind of tunnel visioned as to that's what I'm going to be doing. And you try and tell them about 0.5% of you are actually going to do it. But here, I think you can have more of an influence on guys to send them or head them in the right direction as far as, the next chapter of their life. Because I think they've got these high school kids don't quite know what the next chapter is in their life. So they've still got a lot of things to learn. And, you hope you can head them in the right direction, and trying to, get them to that next level. And give them as much knowledge as you can to hopefully, they can be successful. I'm fortunate here. We've got great families. We've got great moms and dads and families. So they've pretty much done it all, but, I'm with them as much as anybody now in the winter time. So we're trying to, be maybe that little bit of that father figure when they're here at practice, here for games, lifting, whatever it might be.
And last week, Coach, just kind of hop into the season a little bit. We don't want to keep you too long. I'm sure you probably just got done with practice or getting ready to head into a practice. Last week, you guys were actually picked as my team of the week. I just thought those two wins, especially over Richmond Heights and St. V, I thought they were huge. Considering a year ago, I looked at you guys as a team that had all the pieces, right? You had all the talent, the length, the athleticism, but I didn't think those guys quite figured out how to play with one another and how to finish out games down the stretch. So how important do you think it was, or how important do you think it was for those young guys to win those two games? And how has that affected their confidence? Has it translated to practice?
Yeah, first of all, I appreciate us being the team of the week, TJ. We certainly appreciate that recognition, and you're right. And what happened last year is falls totally on my shoulders. We, the first 2 years I was here, we made it to 2 district finals with not a lot of talent, to be honest with you. But those guys, you never wondered if they were going to play hard or not. And they did. And they kind of scrapped their way to a couple district championship games. Now, the finals, we didn't win either one of them. But so last year, yeah, we've got quite a bit more talent than we've ever had. But we never found any consistency as far as, how hard we were going to compete, how hard we were going to work, be unselfish, didn't have a lot of chemistry. And again, that falls, squarely on my shoulders. I did a terrible job with that. And the other thing, we lost 3 or 4 1 to 2 point games. And you just made that point where I think we've grown up some. Those first 2 games were really close. I mean, on the last offensive possession of the game, we won the Richmond Heights game. And then, we won the St. V's game in double overtime. But at the end of the first overtime, St. V's was at the line with 0.4 seconds to go, down 1, shooting 2 free throws. So we've really tried to stress to our guys, guys, we could be 2-2 right now as easily as we are 4-0. And there's just a fine line between, winning and losing, being good and great, being great and being a champion. So I do think we've grown up there a little bit, TJ, because, we won those first 2 close games of the year, whereas you just mentioned, we just, we didn't play real well last year. We didn't compete very hard last year. And I just thought, I think that's an area where we've grown up. I hope. Again, we're 4-0. There's a lot of season left, but I hope we continue on this track.
Yeah, and speaking of which, you guys got a pretty tough stretch coming up over the next 10 days or so with Dublin Kaufman, who's never a rollover, St. Ignatius, one of the more talented teams in Ohio, Newark, who's playing exceptional basketball right now, and then one of the more talented teams out of Northwest Ohio, in Lima Senior. How do you kind of keep your guys in check? They're, like you mentioned, they're coming off of 2 really big wins over 2 of the premier programs here in Ohio. How do you keep those young guys, all those sophomores, juniors, level-headed, heading into another kind of stretch of really tough games?
We just try and, today we talked to them about, if you guys are satisfied, there's probably not a lot of teams in the state of Ohio that could say they beat Richmond Heights and St. V's, in the same year. So if you guys are satisfied with that, that's, that's fine. We can kind of take it from there and kind of cruise the rest of the way. Or, we're going to continue to hold you accountable and demand that you do things the right way. Can you still hear me, TJ?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, somebody was beeping in. Today's practice was awful. We had a film session go very well, and we had a practice that didn't go very well. And so hopefully we'll come back tomorrow and be better. But we just talked to our guys about being humble. And also now people know we beat those 2 teams. So they're going to be coming after us now, where we really looked forward to playing those two teams. I think a lot of teams are going to look forward to playing us now because we have those wins. But, when you talk about, Kaufman and St. Ignatius and Newark and Lima Senior, I mean, you can come out of those 4 games 0-4. So, and I think our guys know that. Again, we talked about the fine line between being really good and being great. And I think they understand that. At least I thought they did till we practiced today because it wasn't very good. But we've still got 3 more days to get ready for the first one, which is Kaufman.
Well, Coach, we appreciate your time. Stubbs, you got something else?
No, I just wanted to thank Coach Moore for coming on. I do want to mention for our younger viewers out there that Mount Vernon High School used to be. So I know he mentioned it earlier, they used to be really good.
Yeah.
Just to kind of show you, Coach Groves, that was the head coach here at Pickerington Central before Jerry Francis, kind of that catapulted him to that job with the job he did up there at Mount Vernon. A good player in his own right. So, yeah, young listeners, Mount Vernon wasn't always what it kind of is now. Not to bang on them, but there was a time in 2018 they got that nice win over Pick North there. That was a big upset win, but we do.
Kurt, my dad's passed away now. He passed away right before we moved back here, and I never really did this a lot, but I probably should, just to kind of brag about my dad a little bit. My dad's last 10 years at Mount Vernon was the winningest program in Central Ohio at any division, any level. And it was AAA, AA, single A back then. And they were the winningest program in Central Ohio for his last 10 years. So, he had a lot of success. I loved playing for my dad. I'd do it again if I could. But, yeah, Mount Vernon was really, really good at one point. And I'm hoping, I know the coach there now, he does a great job. I'm hoping they can somehow get this thing turned around. I just think there's not a lot of participation anymore. In Mount Vernon, the kids that really love the game, like a lot of us did there.
Before we let you go, a couple of buddies of mine were talking about this the other day, and I think that I'm right, but I could be wrong. I mean, it'd be first time this month. Was there a kid that played at Mount Vernon that ended up transferring to Zanesville named Aaron Brown?
Yeah. Aaron Brown, that's who I was just talking about. His dad hired me at Kenyon. And
so that's the same guy.
That's the same guy.
Okay.
And I remember Coach Brown at the time, there were some rumors out there about maybe my dad would retire. And Coach Brown kept saying, hey, please keep me up to date. Please keep me up to date. Aaron Brown was really good friends with Seth Martin. And he said, hey, if your dad decides to retire, we're probably going to go down to Zanesville for his senior year. So I kind of knew that was coming. Yeah, Aaron Brown, he signed at San Diego State. Mm-hmm. Now, nothing against Aaron, but that San Diego State was not the San Diego State they are now.
Right.
But still, one program. He ended up coming back and got a chance to coach him at Cal PA. He came back and played for his dad at the Division II level at that time. Yeah, that's the kid they were talking about.
Okay. All right. I'm glad I got that answered now.
Yeah.
Well, Coach, we really appreciate your time. Best of luck with this gauntlet of a schedule that you got coming up, and I'm sure we'll see you on the drive to Dayton.
Yeah, hopefully you'll see us down there. You don't pass us coming the other way.
All right,
guys,
Coach.
I really appreciate it. This was I really enjoyed it. If I can never do it again, let me know. So I appreciate you having me on.
All right, Coach.
Thanks.
All right, guys. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Coach Andy Moore of the Reynoldsburg Raiders.
And the 1992 OAC Player of the Year.
Yeah.
Shout out to the OAC.
All right, gentlemen, let's wrap this up quickly here with our alumni spotlight. Roth, or should I say Chris Kringle, how about you give us what you got?
All right, so my Division I Alumni Spotlight Player of the Week, Michi Johnson for South Carolina. Obviously, Ohio high school fans will remember him from his time at Garfield Heights. He scored 26 points versus Clemson and 15 versus East Carolina this week. Michi is averaging 18.4 points per game this season on a much improved 8-1 South Carolina squad. And then my small college player of the week, Sir Hughes from Lutheran East. He is at Limestone. Sir shot 7 for 7 from 3-point range in an 85-77 win over Carson Newman as Limestone advances to 2-0 in SAC play. For fans who have been following Sir's journey, Sir was at Alderson Broaddus for a couple seasons, and that school unfortunately had to shut down their basketball program. I believe the whole school shut down as well. And I actually saw Sir's stat line because I still follow Alderson Broaddus' old coach on Twitter, and he's been doing a great job posting all of his former players' stat line at all the different schools they went to. I saw Sir's stat line, 7 for 7 from 3. Going to make him my small college player of the week.
Love it. Love it. TJ?
For me, for my Division I alumni spotlight pick, I went with Enrique Freeman at Akron. I don't think this story about this kid gets spoken about enough. So he was a 2017 grad at St. Martin de Porres here in the Cleveland area, a kid who I had quite frankly never even heard of. He had barely averaged like double digits a game. He went to Akron on an academic scholarship, got convinced to walk on as a sophomore, and last year he was the Defensive Player of the Year in the MAC and the MVP of the 2023 MAC tournament. He had a dominant week. He had 42 points, grabbed 28 rebounds, and 2 wins over Bradley in Northern Kentucky. The clip that really caught my eye, I'm not sure if you guys saw this, against Northern Kentucky, he had a game-winning dunk.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, to me, I don't know about you guys, one of my favorite things as a kid, like middle school, high school, one of the only things that would get me out of bed in the morning was I needed to, before I walked out the door, I had to watch that SportsCenter Top 10 at about 7:54 a.m. And that was a play that was the type of play that you would see, on your way out the door. So huge shout out to Enrique Freeman, Akron, and the staff over there. My small college pick would be the Dayton Forup. This was a kid who played at Lexington last year. He's a freshman at Capital. He's currently averaging 15 points a game, 7 rebounds, shooting a whopping 66% from the field. In my opinion, I think he's on pace to not only be the freshman of the year in the OAC, but he could mess around and be a potential first-team all-conference guy, as Capital currently sits at 8-2, 2-1 in the league. And this is, I don't think people realize how difficult it is to walk into the OAC as a 17, 18-year-old guy and be productive when you just look at how talented that league is right now, top to bottom. You got John Carroll, who's number 1 in the country, just got taken to the wire by Muskingum, a team that was picked to finish, in the bottom half of the league. So every single night, night in, night out, it is an absolute grind. So for him to be as productive as he has been so far through 10 games, I think deserves a huge shout out. Also, quick shout out to my guy, Jake, over at the Ohio Buckets. I know you're going to eat this up. And those are my 2 picks this week for the Alumni Spotlight.
Yeah, let me make sure I give you 2 guys your flowers, because you told us on this show last year, probably more than once, that Baden was going to be a D3 stud for somebody. And it just so happened that it is Capital where he's doing that at. For me, Division I went with Grant Huffman down at Davidson. He's playing really well. He had 19 points, 7 rebounds, 3 steals, and a win over Miami of Ohio. That's a real nice win, really, to be honest with you. Miami, Ohio is not a bad squad at all. And then my small college player, I went with Cade Rugsager, a senior from Mount Vernon, Naz. He is a Dover graduate. 22 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, and a win over Cleary out of Michigan. He's averaging 19 a game this year for the 8-1 Mount Vernon Nazarene squad, led by our guy, Jared Roney.
One of the best.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is our Alumni Spotlight of the Week, one of my favorite segments we do. Gentlemen, you guys got anything else before we wrap it up here tonight?
Thanks to everybody who's been listening. I get a lot of texts and phone calls and jokes pertaining to the show. So we love that, man.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of money in high school basketball. I don't think anyone who's on the Zoom has ever done anything with the intent of making money when it comes to this. We quite frankly are just, we're crazy, man. We love it.
Yeah.
I know you guys feel the same way as me. So if you're as crazy as us, obviously give us a follow on Twitter. Follow the podcast Twitter page and Instagram page at Drive to Dayton. Shoot us any DMs with any questions that you might have. And shout out to my guy. I think his name is like HumesFam419 on Twitter. He DM'd me a document that we didn't quite get to today, but hopefully we can get back to it next week. But it was a document just explaining how competitive balance in Indiana works and how just drastically different it is from what we do here in Ohio. So I'd love to get these two guys' thoughts about that next week. So shout out to him for sending that my way. I had no idea that Indiana did that, but it was really cool just to get a different perspective on how other states have been handling these competitive balance issues.
I'm moving to Kentucky, one state champ. That's all we need.
Gentlemen, it's been fun. Let's do it again next week.
Sounds good.